All right, good evening, everyone. Jake Whitacre here. Going to talk a little bit about Game 4 tonight. I am joined by no one. Things didn't work out with the site tonight. We have Nick at the game, and Albert took care of recap. So right now it's just me. We're just going to go through the good and bad from Game 4 tonight. It was a loss for the Wizards, 106-101, but there were a lot of good things. We'll start with Paul Pierce. Obviously, after Game 3, he kind of took over DC and rode that wave of momentum early. He just has this way of knowing how to hit the right shot at the right time. Obviously, at the very end there, that final shot didn't go in, but there were a lot of times, especially early in the game, when Pierce was hitting some big threes that bailed the Wizards out of a lot of bad offensive sets and kept this game a lot closer early than it probably should have been. Finished with 22 points tonight, 8 of 13 from the field, 5 of 7 from 3. Plus he had 5 rebounds and a really nice assist there late in the game off one of those Randy Whitman out of timeout plays that gave the Wizards a shot late. And it's just been really, really surprising and really, really nice to see Paul Pierce keep things up so far in the series. Because I was worried that, especially when he wasn't at power forward, that he'd have a lot of problems kind of keeping up with DeMarre Carroll and just that it might get to him. But he's still been exercising his will throughout the series. And, last shot aside, you couldn't have asked for anything better from Paul Pierce tonight. So got to give him respect for that. But, of course, the big story tonight was Bradley Beal. Arguably had his best game as a Wizard tonight. Finished with 34 points, which is just an amazing performance. 25 shots, including 4 of 8 from 3. But the real big story was that he got to the line, got 9 free throws, had a nice and one, and he was still getting it done as a distributor tonight. Had 7 assists, only 3 turnovers. There's still a lot of room for Bradley Beal to grow, and that's what's so impressive about his game tonight, is that he was able to have a really nice, really effective game offensively, still do an outstanding job defensively. He helped limit Kyle Korver to only 4 shots tonight. And, if you can keep Kyle Korver from not only just taking and missing shots, but just out of the offense completely, that's just outstanding effort on both sides. And he had to do it for 44 minutes tonight. You really can't say enough about Beal tonight. He has really stepped it up with Wall out. You can still see that there's just some kind of issues with the way he handles pick and rolls sometimes, and just kind of he ends up dribbling back into the roll man. And it's just a lot of things that could still get better. But all in all, you got to like what you saw out of Bradley Beal tonight. I don't know if he can keep that 4 from 8 from 3 up going into Game 5, but they really needed their wings to show up tonight, and Beal and Pierce both answered the call. The only issue, though, is there's some backcourt depth issues, and tonight, without John Wall, that really came out to bear more than anyone could have expected. Well, exactly how you would have expected. With all due respect to Garrett Temple and Will Bynum, who actually had a bit of a Will Bynum game, went 5 for 7 from the field, but also had 4 turnovers. The problem is, without Wall now, you can't have a backcourt pairing without Bradley Beal that works. Bynum and Sessions isn't going to work. You can't throw Razul Butler out there anymore. There's just nowhere to hide a backcourt pairing that doesn't have Bradley Beal in it. And so at this point, I suspect unless there's a blowout, you're going to see Beal get 45 minutes a game, if not more. And, if that's the case, it's going to get harder and harder for Beal to really maintain his offensive output, especially with how much effort he's still getting on the defensive end. As great as it was to see him do so well on both ends, it's going to catch up to him now that we don't have another 3-day break between games. Just the cumulative effect of Beal chasing Korver around or trying to stop Schroeder or Teague. There's just a lot of speed and a lot of, nicks and scrapes you're going to pick up trying to chase them around screens. And that's, not even counting how Nene fell on his leg there at the end of the game. Beal seems to pick up leg injuries every other game, but, it adds up, and you have to worry that if you're throwing Beal out for this often, that it's just going to break him down more. And without Wall in there, it's going to be hard for Beal to keep this up. So, it's really great to see Beal take the next step tonight, but we'll see how things go with Game 5. But like I said, a great game from Bynum, though. Turnovers aside, he gave the Wizards what they desperately need with Wall out, and that's any kind of spark of offense you can get. Even though he had, some really questionable passes and maybe some times where he pushed a little harder than he needed to. At this point, with the stakes what they are and with your backcourt situation the way it is, you have to take the aggression as it is and deal with whatever you get, because if you don't get it from Will Bynum, you're not going to get it from Garrett Temple. And so you just have to take the good with the bad there. And so I'm not going to, fault Bynum too much for the bad in his game tonight, because he gave you some good. And at this point, that's all you can be happy with. So the bad, though, mainly goes to what happened in Game 4. I'm sorry. Long night. But Nene and Gortat, that was really your issue. The front court, for as much as they kind of had their way in Game 3, with Game 4, Paul Millsap was healthy again, and you could see how much of a difference that made for the Hawks. Even though Millsap, didn't dominate from a scoring standpoint, he had 6 assists. And, just when he's on the floor, he's just got enough strength and speed that he can basically get where he wants to from a front court aspect. And he's just, bending that front court in ways that they're not used to handling. Pierce, he's got the speed to keep up with Millsap, but as we saw a few times, he can't deal with him if he's got him posted up down low. Gortat and Nene just don't know how to handle him if he's got the ball. And, when he spaces out, he hasn't been great in this series, but you still have to respect his shot. And I think ultimately that's what's really messing up the Wizards right now. And the real beneficiary of that tonight was Al Horford. Nene and Gortat just looked a step slow trying to recover Al Horford shooting tonight. All throughout the series, they've been willing to give up Horford hitting that elbow jumper, and through games 1 through 3, he's been doing okay. But Horford really took advantage of it tonight, and I think Horford hitting all those shots made Gortat's defensive performance look a little bit worse than it probably deserved to be. I think the strategy on guarding Horford tonight was in the right place, but it didn't work out. And sometimes you just have to throw up your hands there. But there were some things in the pick and roll and other areas where Nene and Gortat just looked confused more than anything. And so hopefully they get that resolved going into Game 5. But especially with Nene, I really think the issue there is the speed's not there. That the explosiveness, the agility to recover on pick and rolls for Nene has been lacking for most of the series. The only time he looked agile enough to keep up was when Paul Millsap was dealing with flu-like symptoms. And so when Millsap's at 70%, that's going to naturally make you look quicker. So, you can't root for Paul Millsap to keep getting sick. And so I think there's going to be some issues still moving forward. They really haven't found a way to corral Paul Millsap when he's healthy. And, for as much as we call for maybe Chris Humphries, I don't know that he's the right solution for Paul Millsap either. I'm not sure there's a guy on the roster that's really equipped to guard Paul Millsap. And at that point, you just have to hope that offensively, through Gooden and Gortat and Paul Pierce at the 4, that you've got enough scoring to keep up. I think tonight the Hawks did a great job of cutting off Gortat from his pick and roll opportunities and his transition opportunities, and I think that contributed a lot to his really rough night. He only had 3 points, 4 fouls, had 8 rebounds, but Gortat just, had one of those games that we saw a lot earlier in the season where he just looked uncomfortable, didn't appear to be in rhythm. And, I think tomorrow there's going to be some discussion on how to get Gortat more involved, because for as good as Gortat is, he is dependent on other players getting him good looks. If you just throw Gortat down in the post and try to have him shoot over a smaller guy, it's just not going to work all that well. And I think that really showed tonight, even on the close shots where it seemed like Gortat was in decent position. It's just not the same when Gortat's trying to create his own shot as opposed to, getting the ball with a head of steam. And that's the biggest downgrade for the Wizards with Wall out. Gortat's the one that's really feeling the effects more than anything, because Sessions and Beal just don't know how to work the pick and roll the same way. Sessions can, come around that screen and get to the rim, and Beal knows how to wiggle around and get that open shot, but neither one really know how to find Gortat when he's coming down the lane. And so they're going to have to find some different ways to get Gortat involved if that's not going to work. So that's one of the big adjustments the Wizards will need to make going into Game 5. Also, with Gortat, I think his struggles really played into how Gooden struggled tonight. He was only 1 of 6 from the field, and the Hawks really did a great job of forcing Gooden out of his comfort zones. He had to put the ball on the floor a lot more tonight and try to create his own shots. He had this one really ugly-looking turnaround elbow jumper, which is just not something you should see from Drew Gooden at this point in his career, but that's where the Hawks were just taking away what the Wizards wanted to do at several points in the game. And, I think you can say Drew Gooden had a bad game, but I think that's more a byproduct of the offense in general having a bad game. Beal and Pierce had their moments, but even with them, it wasn't so much great offense as just hitting some incredible shots to keep this game more competitive in some senses than it probably should have been. So, respect to Pierce and Beal for stepping up and really trying what they could to make this a 3-1 series heading back to Atlanta, but it just wasn't enough, and you can't be too upset about that. So ultimately now we're at a 2-2 series going back to Atlanta for Game 5. So essentially it's a best of 3, and the Hawks are going to have 2 of those games at home. So I mean, at this point, you have to be honest with yourself. It's probably not going the Wizards' way unless John Wall is healthy enough to play the final 3 games. I mean, that's just what it is. And, I saw a lot of discussion after tonight's game that, you could make the argument based on game 2 and game 4, if Wall's healthy, this could very easily be a sweep right now. But ultimately, it's not. And at this point, you have to really think about, is it worth trying to throw Wall out there with the odds so stacked against the Wizards now? Trying to win game 5 and possibly a game 7 on the road in Atlanta. You respect what the Wizards have done, but I'm not sure if you really want to do anything to risk Wall's long-term status to try to make this work. It seems as though every time you see Wall on the bench going from game 2 to game 3 to game 4, he's got more bandaging on his wrist, which seems to be concerning because they talk more, everything about his swelling needs to keep going down, but it just doesn't seem to be the case. And, you really have to take the long-term view here, even if the Wizards get through this. Let's say the Wizards get John Wall back for game 5 and they win in 6 and they get the Cavs. Obviously, Cleveland's not playing well. Kyrie's dealing with his own injuries. Love's out. Let's say the Wizards get through that. Is there anybody out west that you feel comfortable against the Wizards, that you'd feel comfortable with the Wizards beating in the finals? Unless there's more injuries, I just don't see it. And as nice as a finals trip would be, is it worth it if you're putting Wall at such a great risk? It's, again, just something to think about. But, you have to trust, hopefully, that the doctors make the right decision and don't just try to go for what's best to get him out on the floor as quickly as possible. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, obviously, we're not going to influence the decision from our spot here, but I wouldn't be shocked either way what they do. But I think, when in doubt, always go for the decision that protects the future of your franchise. So we'll see how that goes. But speaking of Wall, I guess the big story from tonight was John Wall's suit. Lots of discussion on it, good and bad. We'll get you a little picture of that here because if you haven't seen it, it's really something to behold. And it's something you can really only get away with if you're, just a rich, famous, good-looking man. But yeah, that's just some beautiful stuff right there. It kind of looks like Wall got in a fight with a man on bagpipes, and you got to respect the look. Again, just the boldness. Obviously, Ramon's still not quite sure what to think of it there in that picture, but I'm a big fan of, if you're that rich, that famous, and you can just get away with that, whatever you want, just do it. And so I'm not going to hate on Wall for that look. J.R. Smith, though, said it looked terrible. Worst suit since Charles Barkley's draft day suit, which is pretty bold talk from J.R. Smith, who has always been known to make the best decisions. So we really value his input. But, I'm going to side with Wall. I wouldn't wear it myself because I probably don't look good in anything. But, when in doubt, always go with Wall. And so, that about wraps it up for this one-man show. Thank you for putting up with me. Typically, one-man shows can go a little bit haywire, as we've seen it in certain instances here and there. So I want to thank you for putting up with me. Again, Wizards lose game 4 tonight, 106-101. You know, it's an even series, but certainly you can't feel great about the odds now that the Wizards have given home court advantage back to Atlanta going to game 5. But you got to respect the effort. Ramon Sessions doing what he needs, filling in a Ramon Sessions way. And, you got to respect the fight in the Wizards trying to just make this a still fun, competitive series. When you compare what the Wizards have done here to, say, Houston, who was the healthy team going into their series and just rolled over, you just got to be happy with what the Wizards have done. So even though it was a loss, all in all, still happy to be a Wizards fan. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you for Game 5. And as always, check out bulletsforever.com because that's how this whole operation works. We need you to look at the stuff we write. So thanks again.